Hi, and welcome to Long Live the Queen, where we talk about the women who made history. And by we, I mean the royal we, because it's just me. Today we're going to talk about Marie de' Medici. Born on the 26th of April, 1575, Marie de' Medici popped into Florence like a Renaissance firecracker. The sixth kid, but third to survive the Medici family. Her dad, Francesco I, was Grand Duke of Tuscany, and her mom, Joanna of Austria, was Habsburg royalty. Fancy, right? But his family was messy. On the 29th of August, 1576, Marie's half-brother Antonio was born to her dad's mistress, Bianca Capello. Scandal alert. Then, on the 20th of May, 1577, her brother Philip arrived. Tragedy struck with a stillborn sibling in 1578, and the very next day, the 11th of April, 1578, Marie's mother died, probably from childbirth complications. At 3, Marie was motherless, and her world was already giving Game of Thrones vibes. Let's zoom into the glittering, treacherous world of Florence in the late 1570s, where the Medici court was serving drama hotter than a Tuscan summer. On the 12th of June, 1579, Marie de' Medici's dad, Francesco I, dropped a bombshell that had chins wagging from Florence to Rome. He married Bianca Capello, his longtime mistress, elevating her from a side chick to Grand Duchess in a move that screamed, "I do what I want." The court gasped. This was no mere fling. Bianca, a Venetian beauty with a sharp mind and a sharper ambition, had been Francesco's not-so-secret love for years, ever since she'd left her first husband and a trail of scandal behind. Their affair had already produced Marie's half-brother, Antonio, in 1576, a boy Francesco doted on despite whispers of illegitimacy. Now with Joanna of Austria, Marie's mom, dead just a year prior, Francesco gave Bianca his official +1. Her family was dropping like flies in a plague year, and the losses hit hard. On the 29th of March, 1582, her younger brother Philip, just shy of his 5th birthday, slipped away. He had been a frail spark of hope for the Medici line. Court physicians muttered about fevers or weak lungs, but to 6-year-old Marie it was another name scratched from her world. Philip's death left her and her siblings, Eleonora, Anna, and Antonio, clinging to a shrinking circle. The palazzo's marble halls, once echoing with children's laughter, felt more like a mausoleum. The Grim Reaper wasn't done. In 1584, Marie's sister Anna, barely in her teens, followed Philip to the grave. Anna, one of Marie's older sisters, had been a quiet presence, her life barely recorded before illness. Maybe consumption, maybe something vaguer, snuffed her out. At 9, Marie was old enough to feel the weight of these losses, her world shrinking as fast as her father's temper flared. Whispers of Medici misfortune swirled, fueled by Francesco's erratic rule and Bianca's unpopularity. Some said the family was cursed, punished for their wealth, or Francesco's sins. Marie, with her wide eyes and quick mind, must have overheard servants' gossip, wondering if she was next. But let's talk about Bianca's role in this soap opera, because she was no wallflower stepmom knitting in the corner. Bianca was a player, and she knew how to work the Medici machine. She showered Antonio, her son, with attention, pushing him as Francesco's heir over Marie's full-blooded siblings. This didn't sit well with Eleonora or the court, who saw Marie and her sisters as the legitimate line. Bianca also had a knack for stirring the pot. Her lavish spending and political meddling made enemies faster than you could say Florentine intrigue. Yet she wasn't all villain. She tried to bond with Marie and her sisters, dressing them in silks and parading them at court like mini Medici trophies. Marie, though, was a sharp cookie, even as a kid. She kept her distance, sensing the tension between Bianca's smiles and the court's glares. Meanwhile, Francesco was spiraling. He'd always been moody, more interested in alchemy and hunting than governing. But Joanna's death and Bianca's rise seemed to unmoor him. He'd lock himself in his study, brewing potions or plotting alliances, while Florence grumbled about taxes and Bianca's influence. For Marie, her dad was a distant figure, more myth than man. His affection reserved for Antonio and Bianca. The court buzzed with rumors. Was Bianca poisoning Francesco's mind? Or was she angling to sideline Marie's siblings? The truth was murkier, but the drama was real. At 9, she was navigating a court where loyalty shifted like quicksand, and family ties were as fragile as spun sugar. She clung to her tutors, her books, her faith, building the steel spine she'd need later as France's queen. The family curse wasn't just superstition. It was a legend that power came at a price, and Marie was already paying it. In spring 1584, her sister Eleonora married Vincenzo Gonzaga, a rare win for the Medicis, because on the 19th of October 1587, Francesco and Bianca dropped dead within hours of each other. Poison? Malaria? The jury's still out. But 12-year-old Marie was now an orphan in a snake pit of ambition. Fast forward to December 1599, when France's King Henri IV finally ditched his unhappy marriage to Marguerite de Valois, a queen on all levels. Enter Marie, stage left, with a Medici dowry that could choke a dragon. In December 1600, she married King Henri, becoming Queen of France. Talk about a glow-up. After tying the knot to Henri IV, in 1600, Marie stepped into a world of glittering chandeliers and cutthroat politics, her Medici blood pulsing with ambition. She wasn't just here to wear the crown. She was determined to secure her place in history through her children, each one a thread strengthening the royal line. Marie welcomed 6 children in 8 years, each arrival a triumph in a court that watched her every move. First came Louis, born in 1601, a squalling boy destined to be King Louis XIII. The French court erupted in celebration. Marie had delivered a dauphin, proof her Medici roots could bear Bourbon fruit. Louis was her golden ticket, her future king who'd carry her legacy. But Marie, ever the strategist, knew one heir wasn't enough. In a world where fevers and fate could snatch a child overnight. In 1602, Elizabeth arrived. By 1606, Marie's daughter Christine joined the family, her cries echoing through the Louvre's gilded halls. A year later, in 1607, Nicolas Henri was born, a delicate boy whose gentle nature tugged at Marie's heart. He was a reminder of the fragility of her dreams, a prince who'd need her protection in a court full of whispers and daggers. In 1608, Gaston burst into the world, a spirited young son who'd grow into the charming but rebellious Duke of Orleans. His birth brought a spark of joy to Marie, who saw him in the swagger of her Medici ancestors. Finally, in 1609, Henrietta Maria completed the brood, a daughter whose wit and grace would one day dazzle the English court as Charles I's queen. Each child was a victory, not just for Marie, but for the Medici name. This whirlwind of motherhood wasn't just about securing the throne. It was Marie's way of carving her name into France's story. She dreamed of a dynasty that would stretch across centuries, her children ruling courts from Paris to Madrid to London. Little did she know the seed she planted would bloom in ways she couldn't predict, from Louis XIII's reign to Henrietta Maria's role in England's stormy future. But for now, Marie stood tall, a queen whose legacy was written in the laughter and footsteps of her children, echoing through the palaces of France. In May 1610, Marie was crowned queen, probably dreaming of power and pastries. But bam! The very next day, the 14th of May 1610, Henri IV was stabbed by a fanatic. Suddenly, Marie was regent for her 9-year-old Louis XIII, ruling a France that side-eyed her Italian roots after one day as crowned queen. She leaned hard on her advisor, Concino Concini, but more on that shady dude later. As regent, Marie was holding court like a Medici maestro, but fate kept throwing punches that would have floored a lesser queen. Tragedy wasn't just knocking, it was knocking down the door. On the 9th of September 1611, Marie's older sister Eleonora slipped from this world. Eleonora was Marie's last surviving sibling, a link to her chaotic childhood in Florence, where they'd weathered their parents' deaths and the Medici curse whispers. Losing her was like losing a piece of home. Marie, now 36 and ruling France for her young son Louis XIII, likely mourned in private, her Italian heart aching under the weight of her French crown. The court didn't pause for tears, though. Nobles were circling, waiting for any crack in her armor. Barely 2 months later, on the 17th of November, 1611, another blow landed. Marie's son, Nicolas Henri, Duke of Orleans, died at just 4 years old. This delicate boy had been a quiet light in Marie's bustling brood, his soft eyes and frail frame a contrast to the boisterous Louis or spirited Gaston. Court physicians muttered about fevers or a weak heart, but the details didn't matter to Marie. Losing Nicholas Henri was a dagger to her soul, a reminder of how fragile her dynasty was in a world where a bad winter could steal a prince. She'd already buried her mother, father, stepmother, all of her siblings, and now her own child. The Louvre's marble halls must have felt colder than ever, the tapestries mocking her with their scenes of triumph. Yet Marie, ever the Medici, hid her grief behind a mask of regal steel, knowing that the court's vultures would pounce if she faltered. Marie didn't just endure, she fought back. By 1615, she was ready to flex her power and secure her legacy with a move so bold it had French nobles choking on their wine. She orchestrated a double marriage that would the superpower of the age. In November 1615, her son Louis XIII, barely 14, wed Anne of Austria, the daughter of Philip III of Spain, while her daughter Elizabeth married Philip IV, Spain's future king. Checkmate, haters. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a diplomatic coup, a Medici masterclass in alliance building. Marie knew France's nobles despised her foreign blood, whispering about her Italian advisors and her lavish spending, so she turned their game against them, linking her children to the Habsburg dynasty and ensuring her family's influence stretched across Europe. The French court glittering with gold and tension, Spanish envoys strutting in, and Marie presiding like a queen bee. The marriages were a spectacle with feasts, jousts, enough silk to drown a duke. Louis was awkward and sullen, wasn't thrilled about this bride, but Marie didn't care. She was thinking dynasties, not feelings. Elizabeth, at 13, was shipped to Madrid, her grace and poise a testament to Marie's grooming. These unions were Marie's shield against the chaos of regency, a way to say, my kids will rule the world, so sit down. But behind the pomp, she was a mother sending her daughter into a foreign court, her heart twinging as Elizabeth's caravan rolled away. The Spanish alliance also stirred trouble. French Catholics and Protestants alike grumbled, fearing Habsburg dominance. Marie, though, smirked from her throne, knowing she'd outplayed them all. This period wasn't just about weddings and wakes. Marie was juggling a kingdom on the brink. As regent, she leaned on her Italian confidant, Concino Concini, whose swagger and shady deals made him a lightning rod for noble hatred. She poured gold into the arts, commissioning works to glorify her reign, while fending off plots from her nobles who wanted her out. Her children were her pride, but also her pressure. Each one needed to be molded into a royal asset, schooled in Latin, dance, and diplomacy. Marie, with her thick Tuscan accent and Medici flair, drilled them relentlessly, determined to make them unassailable. She learned from her Florence days power wasn't given, it was built, and she was building a fortress with her kids as the cornerstones. But her son's regency technically ended on October 2, 1614, when Louis hit 13. Did Marie step back? No. She clung to power like it was the last goblet of Bordeaux. As Queen Regent, Marie had been ruling with Medici swagger, steering France for her teenage son Louis XIII, while leaning harder on her Italian confidant, Concino Concini. But the court was a powder keg, and in 1617 it exploded, sending Marie from the throne to a gilded cage. This wasn't just a setback. It was a betrayal that would have broken a lesser queen. Buckle up, because Marie's about to show us you don't mess with a Medici. By early 1617, Marie was at the peak of her power, but the cracks were showing. She'd been regent since her husband Henri IV's assassination in 1610, juggling a kingdom torn by religious wars and noble rivalries. Her right-hand man, Concino Concini, was her rock, or so she thought. This Florentine upstart with his flashy doublet and sharper ambition ran the show, doling out titles while Marie called the shots. But Concini was hated. The French nobles called him a foreign leech, and the court buzzed with their grumbles. Who does this Italian think he is? Marie, fiercely loyal, brushed it off, thinking her regency and her kids were untouchable. Unfortunately, she was wrong. On the 24th of April, 1617, the hammer fell. Louis XIII, now 15 and itching to break free from his mom's shadow, greenlit a plot that was pure Renaissance ruthlessness. Concino Concini was ambushed on a bridge near the Louvre, cut down by swords on Louis's orders. Talk about betrayal. Marie's closest ally, her political shield, was gone in a flash, his body left sprawled as the court cheered. Louis, egged on by his advisor, Charles d'Albert, wasn't just flexing. He was staging a coup. Marie, blindsided, felt the ground shift. Her son, the boy she'd raised to rule, had turned on her. The court's whispers turned into roars. The Medicis done for. Before Marie could catch her breath, Louis's men came for her. By late April 1617, she was invited to leave Paris for the Château de Blois, a fancy way of saying she was slapped under house arrest. The chateau, a Loire Valley masterpiece with a spiral staircase and river views, was no vacation home. It was a prison dressed in velvet, far from the Louvre's power hub. Marie, at 42, was stripped of her regency, her influence, and her freedom. The French nobles, who'd never warmed to her Italian flair, popped the champagne. The court spread rumors. Marie was plotting with Spain, dabbling in poison, even cursing her son. Pure nonsense, but it stuck, painting her as a foreign schemer. Her household was slashed to a skeleton crew. Governess, a few loyal maids, and guards who watched her like hawks. Letters to her allies were intercepted, her jewels removed, her every move tracked. Yet Marie's mind was racing. She was a Medici, raised in Florence's snake pit, and she'd seen worse. "You think stone walls can hold me?" she must have muttered, her Tuscan accent thick with defiance. Marie wasn't alone in spirit. Her supporters, scattered but loyal, smuggled messages, whispering of rebellion. Her son, Gaston, barely 9, and her daughters, still in Paris, were pawns in Louis's court. But Marie's thoughts turned to her old ally. He was a soldier with a grudge, and Marie saw her chance. In Blois, she played the part of the dutiful exile, attending Mass, writing to Louis with honeyed words of reconciliation. But behind closed doors, she was plotting, her quill scratching out coded letters by candlelight. The chateau's walls were thick, but her ambition was thicker. She wasn't just dreaming of freedom. She was planning a comeback to make a court choke on their smugness. On the 22nd of February, 1619, she pulled off the ultimate flex, escaping with a rope ladder at 43, climbing out a window like a Renaissance ninja. Iconic doesn't even cover it. She rallied an army against her own son because, why not? Let's plunge into the deliciously devious drama of November 1630, where Marie de' Medici, our Florentine queen, rolled the dice at a high-stakes power play and got served a slice of humble pie. During the infamous Day of the Dupes, Les Jours de Dupe, this wasn't just a bad day at the office. It was a political cage match that left Marie humiliated and her enemies cackling. By late 1630, Marie was back in the game, sort of. After her iconic rope ladder escape from house arrest in 1619, because who needs a knight when you've got a rope ladder, she'd patched things up with her son, King Louis XIII, through the Treaty of Angoulême. She was back at court, strutting through the Louvre like the Medici queen she was, her silk skirt swishing and her Italian accent cutting through the French chatter. But the truce with Louis was shakier than a chateau in a storm. Marie was still a force, pushing her agenda, commissioning epic paintings to flex her legacy, and keeping her Catholic faith front and center. The problem was, Louis, now 29, was no longer her little dauphin. He was a king under the thumb of his cunning chief minister, Cardinal Richelieu, the red-robed mastermind who ran France like his personal chessboard. Marie despised Richelieu. To her, he was a snake in scarlet, a low-born upstart who'd wormed his way into Louis's trust and sidelined her influence. Richelieu was all about centralizing power, crushing noble rebellions, and keeping France's Protestant Huguenots in check, even if it meant cozying up to Protestant allies abroad to counter the Habsburgs. Marie, a devout Catholic raised in Florence's cutthroat courts, saw this maneuvering as a betrayal of faith and family. She wasn't alone. Her son, Gaston, Duke of Orleans, and Louis's rebellious brother also loathed Richelieu, as did a clique of nobles who called themselves the Dévots, who wanted a Catholic First France. Marie smelled an opportunity. If she could boot Richelieu, She'd claim her spot as Louis's top advisor and steer France her way. Game on. Enter the Day of the Dupes, a 2-day showdown on the 10th and 11th of November, 1630, that went down in Paris's Luxembourg Palace, Marie's personal stronghold. The stage was set when Louis fell gravely ill that summer, coughing and wasting away from what historians think was tuberculosis or a nasty fever. The court held its breath. Would the king die? Marie and her allies, including Keeper of the Seals, Michel de Mauriac, saw their chance. If Louis was weak, they could pressure him to ditch Richelieu, who was blamed for France's endless wars and empty coffers. Marie, with her Medici flair for drama, summoned Louis to her apartments on the 10th of November. Picture her, 55, draped in black velvet, her eyes blazing as she laid into Richelieu's treachery. She accused him of disloyalty, undermining her Catholic vision, and gasped, disrespecting her, the Queen Mother. Louis, caught between his domineering mom and his loyal minister, squirmed like a kid stuck in a family feud. Marie thought she had him. She'd rallied Mauriac, Gaston, and the Davots, who whispered that Richelieu was leading France to ruin. Word spread that Louis had agreed to sack Richelieu. Courtiers started packing their bags, ready to celebrate the cardinal's fall. Mauriac was already eyeing Richelieu's job, and Marie was probably picking out new curtains for her triumphant return to power. The court buzzed with glee. The Medici's back, baby. But Richelieu, ever the fox, wasn't going down without a fight. On the 11th of November, the plot twisted. Richelieu, tipped off about Marie's scheming, crashed her victory party at Luxembourg Palace. Legend has it he burst into Louis's presence, tears streaming, begging for a chance to defend himself. He played the loyalty card hard, swearing he'd served only France and its king. Louis, torn and famously indecisive, caved to Richelieu's theatrics. The cardinal's charm, or maybe his dirt on the nobles, worked like a spell. By the end of the day, Louis doubled down on Richelieu, keeping him as minister and turning his back on Marie. Mauriac was arrested. The Davots scattered, and Marie? She was left fuming, her grand plan in tatters. The court dubbed it Le Jour de Dupes, the Day of the Dupes, because Marie and her allies thought they had won, only to be played like a harpsichord. Marie's humiliation was public and brutal. She bet everything on ousting Richelieu, banking on her status as Queen Mother to sway Louis. But Richelieu's grip on the king was ironclad, and Marie's Italian roots made her an easy scapegoat for nobles who never liked her anyway. Whispers flew. She's too Catholic, too foreign, too Medici. Her own son Gaston, ever the opportunist, slipped away to plot his own schemes, leaving Marie exposed. She retreated to her apartments, her pride stung, but her resolve unbroken. The Luxembourg Palace, once her stage, now felt like a gilded cage. She knew she couldn't stay in a France that had chosen Richelieu over her. The Day of the Dupes wasn't just a loss. It was the beginning of the end for Marie in France. By the 18th of July, 1631, she'd flee to the Spanish Netherlands, a queen without a court, chasing allies and dreaming about a comeback. She was still Marie de Medici, the woman who'd climbed out of Blois with a rope ladder, and she wasn't ready to bow out. This setback only stoked her fire, even if it meant burning bridges with her own son. In 1638, she popped up in England to visit her daughter, Henrietta Maria, Queen of England, stirring up trouble with her Catholic entourage. The English court was like, "Ma'am, who invited you?" By the 3rd of July, 1642, Marie's story ended in Cologne, where she died in exile. Broke and far from the French throne she had fought for. She had gone from Medici princess to queen regent to royal runaway. Now let's talk about Marie's vibes. This woman was a Medici through and through. Loved her gold, her gowns, and her glory. She commissioned the Medici cycle, 24 massive Rubens, paintings that screamed, "I'm fabulous, deal with it." Her rope ladder escape? Pure chaos energy. But she was also a mom who arranged killer marriages for her kids, and a regent who held France together when nobles wanted her head. Sure, she picked fights with Richelieu and lost. But you don't get to be a queen without swinging for the fences. What did you think about Marie de Medici? Was she a boss or a hot mess? You can share your thoughts with me at longlivethequeenpodcast@gmail.com, slide into my DMs on Facebook or Instagram at longlivethequeenpodcast, or join the royal party on Patreon. The link is in the show description, and the bottom tier is free. Totally free. Who doesn't like free stuff? And with that, We've reached the end of season 3. How did you like the Saga of France? I enjoyed it. But if I'm honest, I keep going back to the Tudors because I just love them. And I feel like a lot of you do too. So for season 4, we're going to do a deep dive into my Tudor era, where I just tell the whole 118-year saga. Join me for season 4. Long live to all the queens. Until next time. Bye.
You'll be remembered.
Thanks for listening.